all the way from North Carolina, David Novak.
Okay, I can't own the North Carolina heritage that those other fine storytellers can lay legitimate claim to, because I'm an interloper. Some of you who heard me earlier this morning know that Novak means new man, and I'm a newcomer everywhere I go, and I've only lived in North Carolina 12 years, so I tried to get a little bit of that spring water, maybe. That quote is a funny, sweet quote that the folks at the Houston Storytelling Festival dreamt up, actually. I can't own that either, but that's just for the sake of clarity, I guess. Let me see what I can do here with our balance and our reach. Oh, I know what I need to do. When you're young and so in love as we, and bewildered by the world we see, how can anything survive? How can we keep love alive when these little minds keep tearing us in two? Oh, what a town without pity can do. When I was in the 9th grade in South Florida, which is where I grew up, I went to Nova High School, which at the time was at the edge of the county in Davie, Florida. We had the Everglades just outside the front of our school. My mother was a science teacher there, and despite the fact that it was the space race and Westinghouse had dumped millions of dollars worth of scientific equipment so we could have the state-of-the-art laboratories to study in, her favorite classroom was the retention pond out in front of the school. That's where she'd take all of us and all of her students to go scoop up the green stuff and look in the reeds and study the dirt and be educated by the earth. But in English class in 9th grade, we all had to read Romeo and Juliet. Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father, refuse thy name. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. And we had to then write an essay comparing and contrasting our lives with the lives of Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet, my life has nothing to do with Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet took place in Italy hundreds of years ago when men wore tights and carried swords. Then we had to learn and watch West Side Story. When you're a jet, all the way from your first cigarette to your last dying day. Maria, I just met a girl named Maria. And so then we had to write an essay comparing and contrasting our lives with Romeo and Juliet and West Side Story. And my life has nothing to do with Romeo and Juliet or West Side Story. West Side Story took place in New York, and Romeo and Juliet happens in Italy when men wore tights and carried swords. But they were not finished with us. We then had to go to Ovid and read Pyramus and Thisbe, the story that takes place in Babylonia, in the Great Fertile Crescent, back there at the origin of Western civilization, when the land had been domesticated. The farmers were working the land and bringing forth enough food to create the first stratified hierarchical societies, and the population was increasing, but the population was living in close urban centers, walled cities with stone apartments so that the arable land could be available for farming. And in the walled city, there were two families that lived next door to one another, separated by the stone work of the walls. And on one side was the father who was captain of the guard, and he had a son. And he wanted his son to grow up to be a good soldier, so he made sure that that son was exercised and lessoned every day. All right, boy, now come on, pick up that sword. All right, Dad, I'm ready. Okay. Well, ow! I wasn't ready. Well, you said you were ready. Well, I wasn't ready. I wasn't even looking. Ow, look at that. Ow, you cut me. Oh, I'm bleeding. Ow, come on now, suck it up. No, men don't cry. All right, now, you gotta learn. If somebody comes at you, you gotta be ready. You gotta be ready. Are you ready? Yeah, I'm ready. Oh, he got me again. Oh, man. He had a little room. He hated it. Oh, broom closet. They don't like me. They don't wish they ever had me. My dad doesn't like me. He's trying to kill me. Keeps always hitting me in the same place. I'm gonna die of blood poisoning here. Oh. Now, next door to that family was a group of farmers who would go out of the city every day, and they would work in the fields, and they would come back to their apartment there in the stone room, and they had a daughter. They'd be out there working in the fields and digging in the roots and pruning and weeding and planting, and she'd say, "Mom, do you think I'm pretty? Wheat doesn't care what you look like. Now get down here and help me. But my fingers are getting full of dirt." Well, that's a good thing. That's what they're supposed to be full of. Now get your brain full of dirt and not full of all these thoughts about being pretty. And so they lived these parallel lives side by side until the spring came one year, and the world, waking from its deep winter slumber, began to yawn and stretch, and the earth began to quake and shake. And the ground shook and rattled up all the stonework of that city. And the stonework of that apartment between those two families was shaken as well. And that day that boy came back to his room. "Man, oh, he got me again. He's trying to kill me. And oh, look at this. My room is falling apart. Look what happened here. There's a big crack in the ceiling. There's a big lump of stone right there on my bed. If I was lying in that bed, I'd be squished. They wouldn't even care. They wouldn't know. They don't care. They'd be happy if I was dead." Look at that, man. I barely escaped alive. And then look at this. Look, there's this hole in the wall. I'm going to get a cold. I'm going to die from a draft or something. There's a hole. The wind is coming right through. Look at that. And he looked right through that hole, and on the other side of that hole was that girl. "Night, Mom. Night, Dad." "97, 98, 99, 100. Oh, split ends. I can't get this dirt out. Oh. Night." Who said that? Somebody out there? Never mind. Night. What was that? She saw the hole. She saw an eye. Ew, an eye! Get away from there. What do you think you're doing? You're looking. Oh. Hi. Well, there he was on the other side. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that you were." I was really. Oh, I don't know. I'm sorry. I didn't know what. I just saw this hole in the wall, and I was looking through, and I'm. Hi. I'm sorry. Who are you? Thisbe? Is that your name, Thisbe? That's a nice name. What does that mean? Is that like a kind of a flower or something? Because you smell like flowers. No, I know. No, I don't mean anything by that. No, I mean, no, I like flowers. Flowers, and I know they grow in the dirt and everything, but they're not dirty. I mean, flowers are pretty. I'm sorry, I don't want to see. Never mind. Me? Oh, well, got a stupid name. No, my name's Pyramus. Yeah, I mean, I know. Nobody else named Pyramus. You're right about that. It's a unique name. My dad named me for some friend of his who died in the war. I'm named for some dead guy. Nobody else named Pyramus except the dead guy. I think it's a stupid name. What? Do you like it? Oh, well, I guess so, yeah. I guess it's okay, yeah. Well, thanks. Well, that started it. Suddenly, their empty rooms were filled now with possibilities because there was a little opening in the big stone wall. And daily, they would come and they would visit with each other, Pyramus on one side, Thisbe on the other. And because they had someone to visit with at the end of the day, every day, became endowed with the possibility of seeing for another, looking at the world with the idea that there was something out here to share. Now, Pyramus would be out there practicing with his father. Wait a minute. Okay, can I just take a break here for a moment? Hey, look at that. Look. know, they ran cattle so close to the city. Look at that. It's a stone. It's all sparkly. Sparkles like it's got little stars in it. It's like a little piece of the sky. I wonder if it fell from the sky. Wow, that's really neat. A little piece of the sky fell down right here. I bet Thisbe would like that. I'll show it to her later. And stick it in his pocket, you know. She'd be out there working in the fields, and she'd be digging and come up with, wow, look at that. It's a shell. It's like a seashell. How'd that get so far inland? It's kind of hard, like a rock. It's like a rock shell rock thing like that. That's really unique. That's really unusual. I'll give it to Pyramus because he's unusual. He's kind of unique too. I bet he'd like that. And so it happened that at the end of every day, they'd come to meet up with each other, you know, and they'd share with little things that they'd found that were small enough to fit through that little hole in the wall. And their little piles of trinkets began to, you know, grow up on either side of the wall there between the two of them. And suddenly their lives had purpose, for they began to live for somebody other than themselves, right? They began to think about somebody other than themselves. They had this hole in this wall to share with each other, but they saw the hole, but they didn't see the wall. And one day, Pyramus was out with his father, and he said, Dad, hang up a second, hang on. Dad, you know, there's this family that lives next door, and you know, we've lived next door to them for years. How come we never meet them or talk to them or ever, you know, like get together with them or that? Listen, son, I'm going to tell you this one time and one time only, so you listen careful. Those farmers that live next door will never set foot in our house. We will never talk to them. During the war, I had men who were starving, and an army runs on its stomach, son. We came to those people for food. We needed it desperately. We were fighting for their lives as well as our own. We were fighting to save our country, and they burned their crops before they would give anything to us. I had good men who died of starvation trying to save this town. No, deep wounds never heal. We'll have nothing to do with that family. I never want you to hear them mentioned ever again. She'd be out in the fields. Mom, how come we never talk to those people who live next door? Don't let your father hear you mention them. During the war, they came and they took everything we had to feed their soldiers. They even took our seed crops. It's taken us all these many years since then just to get back what we had then. No, deep wounds never heal. And so it was. There was a great wall between these family of history that made them hate. But there was a little opportunity, that little opening in that wall. That little opening, though, was not enough. You know, a taste of honey is worse than none at all. And it just really began to bother them. Pyramus came in finally one night. He says, that's it, I can't stand it. They just want me to die. Dad's trying to kill me. They put me in this room. They hope that it'll fall down on me. They just don't want me around here. They wouldn't even notice if I'm gone anyway. I just can't stand it. Thisbe, are you there? I just can't do this anymore. I gotta get out of here. I gotta get away. I don't want me here. And I was just thinking, you know, I know how to trap, and I've got a sword. I know a little bit about fighting. I could protect you. And I've got a skin for holding water, and I've been saving some rolls from dinner over the course of the last week, and some of them are still edible. And I was thinking, well, you know how to grow stuff. You could grow a garden, and we could work together, and we could make a life for ourselves. We could get out of here. We could get away from them, because they're always telling us to behave and watch what we do when we're together. And I just want to get away from here. You know, I want to go and I want to run away as fast as we can, holding on to one another's hands, trying to get away into the night. And then you'll put your arms around me and you'll squeeze me real tight, and then you'll say, I think we're alone now. Doesn't seem to be anyone around. What do you say? So they made a plan. They would meet at the tomb of King Ninus. Now the city was gated, all except for the cemetery, for the great tombs of the kings, for the land of the dead. Those gates were open. They would go to the gates, to the cemetery there. They would meet by the great tomb of King Ninus, where there was a mulberry tree. with white blooms, easy to see in the night. And at the base of the mulberry was a spring of cool, fresh, clear water. They would meet there. Pyramus would fill his water skin, and then they would go away and make a life for themselves. So the plan was decided. And Thisbe was the first to wrap her shawl about her shoulders and to sneak out, her family sleeping wearily from their hard work. She crept in the shadows out into the moonlight, which painted all the world with silver. And she darted in among the dark shadows until she came to the land of the dead, where the great monuments rose up silver in the moonlight. And there was the tomb of Ninus, and there, silvery white, were the blooms of the mulberry, and there was the spring gurgling like a heartbeat in the land, and she could see a figure stooping low before the water, and she thought it was he, it was him, it was the one she was going to run with. It was Pyramus. And so her heart beat as she quickened her pace, and she ran and she ran and she ran into the dark, ran into her hopes, and ran into a lioness who was slaking its thirst after killing a gazelle at the spring there. And the lioness and the girl were each startled by the other. Thisbe screamed, "Ah!" The lioness reached, turned it, became entangled in her scarf. She ran and hid among the stones. The lioness disentangled itself and ran into the wild, just as Pyramus was making his way there into the land of the dead. The stones silver in the moonlight, the white blooms glittering, the spring gurgling, its heart beating, and his heart beating as he came closer and nearer, and then he could smell that floral scent, that Thisbe. He knew she must be near. Thisbe. Ha ha. He could see in the moonlight her tracks in the mud, and then he saw it there. Ha 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 ha. Her scarf. Ah, Thisbe. Oh, so coy. So teasing. Where are you? I know you're hiding. You're... But he saw how torn the scarf was, and how daubed with blood it was. And he looked again into the mud, and he saw the footprints of his beloved and the paw prints of the lioness. And he knew he had come too late. Too late. Too late, my love. You've gone beyond. You've gone beyond this world into the realm of the ancestors, into the lands of the dead. Do not go alone. Do not go without me. I mean to be beside you in death as well as in life. And he took out the sword of his father. He nestled its hilt in the roots of the tree, and he threw his heart upon it, and his own hot blood flowed down into the mud and into the spring. And as his life drained from him, he looked up, and there, pale in the moonlight, he saw her standing over him. She had come out of hiding at the sound of his voice. So pale she seemed, he felt he had made his way over to the other side and had caught up with her ghost, and he said as he died, "Thank you for waiting." And there alone, her beloved dead before her, his blood still pouring out. There was a bit of blade remaining. She could join him. She embraced him and the blade, and their bloods mingled together, and together spilt into the mud, and was drunk up by the roots of the mulberry, the sole witness to the tragic scene, whose white blossoms fell like tears upon the dying lovers. And ever after that, the mulberry ripens blood red with the rich, bittersweet flavor of lovers lost. So we had to write an essay comparing and contrasting our lives with Romeo and Juliet, with West Side Story, and with Pyramus and Thisbe. My life has nothing to do with Pyramus and Thisbe and West Side Story and Romeo and Juliet. Pyramus and Thisbe happened in Babylonia a long time ago. West Side Story in New York. Romeo and Juliet in Italy, where men wore tights and carried swords. Finally, we were free. And winter break came, and we got a break. And then when we came back after the new year, they hit us with great expectations. Valentine's was coming. The Ides of February, which had originally been celebrated as the Roman Lupercalia, the festival of the wolf, the festival of expiation of the end of the old Roman year. The purging of winter, for February means fever, fibrous, febrile, fibricity. It is the month of fevers. And then, of course, that holiday became neutered by this new austere religion that came out of the Middle Eastern deserts, and it was turned into St. Valentine's Day. So we had a Valentine's Day dance coming up at school. And I had this friend that I would hang out with. His name was Gar. It was a good name for South Florida. And he lived near school, and he was a real social kind of guy, real outgoing kind of guy. And I liked to kind of, get some of that society rubbed off on me by hanging out with him, because he always had a lot of friends. And I was sitting with him at lunch, and we were having lunch together when a friend of his came over and sat with us, and a friend of hers came and sat with us right across from me, and that's when I met Sandy, with her tiger eyes and her chestnut hair and her round, full mocha cheeks and thick lips like coral. And I looked at her and she looked at me, and I said, "Hi." But from that moment on, I couldn't get Sandy out of my mind. I just thought of her everywhere I went. And I began to run into her in the hallway at school. A lot of people think that high school is about what happens in the classroom. It's really about what happens in the hallways, right? High school's like a great lung. And the classrooms are like the little alveoli, right? They're the little places where one exchanges oxygen with the larger institution. But when the school breathes in, we're all sucked into the classrooms, right? You see? And then when it breathes out, whoosh, we're all exhaled into the hallways. And I learned to find her in the hallways. I learned what her traffic pattern was during the course of the day because of her class schedule, and I managed to find myself kind of running into her. "Hey, hi, how you doing? Hey, where you going? You going to, math, huh? Well, yeah, I'm going that way. Sure, here, let me get that for you. I'll come walk with you. That's great. Yeah, good to see you. You having a good day? Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's going pretty well. Yeah, okay. Hey, have a good class. I'll see you later. I'll just run right over here. Yeah, bye. No, I have to run all the way across the other side of campus to get to my real class, which is all the way over there, Now I found out where her locker was. Now in South Florida, we had these ventilated lockers, right, with these little vents in them and everything, and we had combination locks. And I could take a stick of juicy fruit gum, and slip it up there in her locker, and she could send one back to me, and a little bit of a note or something like that back and forth. It was pretty easy. It was a lot of fun, and suddenly everything I was seeing and doing was in some way contextualized by my new interest and involvement with Sandy. I'd sing in the shower, "Sandy, I just met a girl named Sandy, and suddenly that name will never be the same again, Sandy." It wasn't until my younger sister went through a similar phase a few years later that I discovered how public such seemingly private moments really were. It's a good thing I didn't know then, because I was in love. In love with this possibility. And so the Valentine's Day dance was coming up. And my friend Gar said, you know, I'm going to the dance. You going to the dance? I don't know. I don't go to a dance. Why don't you ask Sandy? Well, really? I don't know. How could I make that? Well, go ahead, ask her. You know what hurt to ask. You know, okay. All right. So I took a little piece of paper and I wrote, you want to go to the dance? And I folded it up and I slipped it up into her locker vent there in the morning. And in the afternoon, I came back to my locker. I opened up. There was that piece of paper. The same note that I'd written, and it said, yes. Wow. So we made plans to meet at the dance. Now there's a problem. The school that I went to out there in Davie, Florida, so far out was a 45-minute drive from our home. We lived up in North Lauderdale. Sandy lived further south in Broward County in Hollywood, Florida. This was a school that took students in from all over the county. So we never really saw each other in our neighborhoods. We weren't of the same neighborhoods. It wasn't one of these neighborhood schools. It was a kind of a commuter school. We only saw each other on campus, and so seeing each other at a dance would be the very first and only opportunity we would have had to have any kind of relaxed, non-structured social time to get to know each other. But in order to get to the dance from my home, that would involve somebody driving me, like my brother or my mother. And I didn't want either of those options, and neither did they. But my friend Gar lived close to campus, you see, so he was in walking distance. So the plan was that I could go home with him on Friday, change, have some dinner there and everything, and then we would just walk back for the dance that Friday night. I'd stay overnight at his place, and then sometime on Saturday, either his mom or my mom or somebody would get me home. That was a good plan, made it real easy and smooth, you know. So, of course, I got ready for the dance. Now, that meant a tie and a lot of combing of what I used to have all over my head, all that hair, a lot of scent. And then we walked over to school, and I had these two little paper tickets for the dance, one for me, one for Sandy, and I was going to meet her there. That was the plan. So I came to the school just in the twilight as the sun was going down over the Everglades. Beautiful red-orange sunset. And our gymnasium at the school had this outdoor hallway, this open-air hallway there that was lit by these jaundiced yellow lights. And then there was out in front of that, there was a little bit of a slope to a circular drive where the cars could come in to drop students off and then circle back out again. So I stood out in front of the gymnasium with my two little paper tickets, watching and waiting for Sandy to arrive. Now, Gar always went stag everywhere he went because he always had so many friends. He was so easygoing, he'd hang out with anybody. He just had his own ticket. He went right on in and started hanging out with other people out there, and I was waiting for Sandy. And the band struck up behind me, started playing. One is the loneliest number that you'll ever do. And I'm waiting there and I'm watching as people are pulling up and getting out of their cars and coming into the dance, and the sun is going down and the moon is rising in the east and the school is turning into a fairyland of moonlight and possibilities. And I just feel this great opportunity rising as I'm in the golden glow of the gymnasium lights, and I'm looking at the darkening world outside, and I'm hearing the sleigh bell sound of the crickets in the high grass, and I'm looking at the cars coming in, their lights piercing the darkness, and people getting out and going in, and the band thumping like my heart beating behind me. And I'm waiting and I'm watching and I'm thinking, this is it. I feel like I'm, Alibaba, about to approach the cave of wonders. And it's going to open up, and there's going to be Sandy stepping out of the moonlight into the gold light. And I'll have this golden moment, and maybe even a kiss. And the cars become fewer and fewer, and I'm still waiting. Finally, one car comes, stops. I see it down there. The door opens, the dome light, and the car comes on, and it's her, it's Sandy. She walks up the slope, and she stops right at the edge of the light. And we look at each other, and she smiles, and she says, I tried to call you, but you weren't home. So my dad brought me all the way out here to tell you. I can't come to the dance with you because I'm Jewish. And, well, you're not. I'm sorry. And she turned. And she went back down to the car, got in. The door closed, the light went out. Why do the stars go on shining? Why do the birds sing above? Don't they know it's the end of the world? I didn't feel like going into the dance. So I walked around campus. I knew the campus well. I mean, my mom was a teacher. I was often there early, often there late. Something was happening in Davie. Trouble comes in threes, I guess. I came to the courtyard in the center of the campus. The moon was brightening the night sky, but I could still make out some of the major constellations. I lay down on the grass, and I looked up at the sky, and I could see the Big Dipper. I could see Orion's belt. I thought, he's got a sword. I wish I had one. And as I looked at the stars, I thought, no, they're just stars. They're thousands and thousands of light years away and apart from each other, but the way they form in the sky makes pictures. And we connect the dots and we say, well, that's a belt, that's the sword, that's the hunter, there's the dipper, there's the... And I realized Romeo and Juliet, West Side Story, Pyramus and Thisbe, they're all the same story. And they happen over and over again. But they're thousands of years apart, like those stars. But when you connect the dots, you see the picture. And now my story was in the constellation too. I didn't have a sword, but I had a friend who found me there and heard what happened, I guess. So we walked home in the dark. And we improvised with each other on the subjects of girls and love, things we knew nothing about. And the next morning, the sun was up and shining like a red rubber ball. In biology, we learned about the heart. We were taught that the heart was a muscle. And like muscles, if there's no pain, there's no gain. So I went on to exercise that muscle, and I still continue to exercise it. I had my heart broken again and again, and I broke a few hearts too along the way. And before we graduated high school, Sandy's father died. I'd been so angry at the man, because I'd been looking at a hole in a wall, and I was so fixated on that opening and that opportunity, I didn't see the wall. But when I got the chance to back up in my life and look at what stood between us, I asked his forgiveness. I tried to understand a little bit better how our history can enlighten us, but it can also enslave us, ensnare us, can keep us captive and isolated from each other. And now at home in Asheville, in our backyard, we have a mulberry tree. And here comes the spring again. And in a short time, it'll put out berries. And I will go to those berries, and I will pluck them when they are full and tender. And as I pull them from the tree, they will break in my fingers and bleed down my hand, a deep red staining juice. And I will stand, and I will taste again that bittersweet flavor of love lost.